We're gonna be safe and sound tonight.
Hello, so this talk is titled Marxism and the Working Class. Essentially, what I plan to do is to highlight how Marxism has promised the working class everything and, in actuality, taken from them everything. So, Marxism, the entire ideology, deifies the working class and holds them in the highest regard in the rhetoric. But in practice, the practice of socialism and Marxism and the rise of socialism and Marxism in the United States, what has it really done for the working class? How has the working class benefited? Their taxation has increased steadily over the last, I would say, 75 years or to 100 years. Their poverty has steadily increased, and businesses have been driven away and driven out of the country. And the takeover of the healthcare industry has failed them. The takeover of education has failed them. And their plight, their poverty, and their suffering is used as a scapegoat for ever more control and ever more centralization of money and power. So, Marxism is essentially when the government nationalizes industry. Same with socialism. They're very definitions are very close. And when you nationalize industry and when you nationalize property and income and labor through taxation, you essentially centralize the entire control of all of civilization into Washington, D.C., into Congress, into the hands of 500 people. Now, where I'm from, the greater metropolitan area has 1.1 million people. Now, there are 323 million people in the United States. If you divide by 535 congressmen, that works out to be 1 in 626,000 people. Do you expect that one person to control your life and to manage your life and to give you everything you wanted and lead you to a productive lifestyle? That one person who has their attention split between 626,000 people. It's impossible. Even if he had an intellect of a genius and he had the heart of a saint, mind you, this is a congressman, all of that tax money would be diverted and squandered downstream by someone with less of a mind and less of a heart than him. The hierarchy created through taxation is absolutely massive and so far beyond anything else that society or the free market could ever comprehend. It is an abomination, and it only leads to poverty, embezzlement, and heartache every single time. The alternative is to have the people have the money. It's very simple. You don't pay taxes, and then the people have the money, and the people have the power. A lot of Marxists don't trust the people, and a lot of Marxists actually hate the people, and they want suffering, and they want to be the person who is suffering the least, so they can look down upon their neighbors, and they can look down upon their friends who are doing worse than them, and they can say, yeah, well, at least I'm better than him. At least I have a roof over my head, and at least I can fill my gas tank. And that makes them feel good about themselves. It makes them feel powerful, right? This is the essence of a lot of socialists and a lot of Marxists and a lot of these types who have a bachelor's degree. They toe the line culturally, and the state gives them just enough to survive. But you know what? the people who are suffering and the people who are struggling next to them are doing worse than them, and that's enough. That feeling of the pride they get from seeing someone else's human suffering is enough for them to support the Marxist state and to support this violence and this disgusting centralization of power and control, which is completely destroying our society and completely destroying our entire civilization. Now, the direct contrast and alternative to Marxism is investment. Investment within the market and investment in products that you feel will improve society. That's exactly what politicians do with your tax money, allegedly, or so they say. They say that we will take your tax money and we will invest it into the poor. We will invest it into daycare and green energy and all of these things. But they don't. It's embezzled. It's stolen. It is lost in a maze of people and institutions that you can't really get to the bottom of. And there's no real legal obligation by the congressman or the politician to fulfill any of their campaign promises. And their campaign promises are just empty platitudes. There's no real specifics. There's no legal obligation to really do anything for the public. And nothing gets done. I mean, when I look around my locality, there's very little construction and no innovation for the last, I would say, 50 to 60 years. And people don't really expect, people don't expect there to be innovation. But at the same time, they expect more Marxism and more taxation because there's a slight chance that a little bit of that money will end up in their pocket. There's a slight chance that the private sector and the working class and all of their struggle will end up in their pocket and their family's pocket. And so they vote for Marxism, and so they push Marxism, and they actually physically threaten the people around them and threaten their community with violence because they want that extra 5% raise maybe that the politician will give them for cooperating within the Marxist state, the violent Marxist state. And during all of this politics and all of this debate, if you really want to call it that, is there any real discussion of the worker getting anything, getting any benefits whatsoever? No, of course not. The only person who's ever discussed the worker getting anything is Andrew Yang, and everyone demonizes him and says hateful things about him, and because he dared to touch the third rail of Marxism, which is actually helping the workers. A Marxist has never done that, and a Marxist will never do that, because the worker suffering is the scapegoat. It is the eternal scapegoat of the Marxist to get more power, to get more taxation, and to get more control. He will grind the worker into poverty, suicide, and homelessness, and behind closed doors will smile about it, because that gives his rhetoric more power, and that gives him more power, so he can steal more, and so he can destroy more. Andrew Yang is the opposite of that. He wants to give the workers money. He wants to refund the workers for all of the suffering that they've endured over these decades. And Democrats don't want to hear a single word of it. They are not interested in that because it threatens the power of the Marxist state. If workers are alleviated of the burdens that they are currently under, then what argument does Marxism have? Where Marxism has nothing to stand upon. Therefore, it seeks to destroy the worker. Its goal is to destroy the working class and then use the plight of the working class to bring down the hierarchy of society itself and to bring down private property and to consolidate power unto itself. And then it will embezzle all of that money and you won't see any of it. And we will live in a controlled society where that one congressman will try and actively manage the 626,000 people under him But you know what? He actually makes more money by embezzling and stealing all of that tax money. So that's 626,000 people. You're not going to get shit. He's going to leave the country. He's going to buy a mansion in the Caribbean, and he's going to hoard all of that tax money in his offshore corporations. And none of you are ever going to see a dime. And you're going to deserve it. You Marxists will deserve the fate that is coming to you, because you are consolidating power on a level that has never before been seen in human history. U.S. history. It has happened plenty of times in history, and it always ends the same way. It ends with bloodshed, it ends with starvation, it ends with poverty, and it ends with the complete collapse of every civilization that has ever attempted it. And the reason it fails and the reason it collapses is very simple. I just stated it. One man trying to manage 626,000 lives. It's impossible. It will never happen. It can never happen. The alternative is power to the people. The alternative is investing in your community. And the alternative is not paying tax. Right now, the United States, every single dollar is taxed 50%, 50 to 60% every time it switches hands in all economic activity. And imagine what the world might be like if 60% of every dollar wasn't stolen in every transaction. Imagine if all of that money stayed in your local community and didn't go to your congressman, and didn't go to Washington, and didn't go to the Department of Homeland Security and the Pentagon and all of these horrible, corrupt healthcare industries and health insurance companies, etc., etc. It's a very powerful thought exercise, and I suggest you all do it. And I suggest you all think about what the world might be like if the people actually had power, and if the people actually determined the course of their own futures instead of begging for that one person 1,000 miles away to save their world and to save their community and to save their lives. Because guess what? He doesn't give a shit about you. He never has and he never will. You're peasants. You're peons. You are ants. You are nothing. You are a giant mass of humanity that your congressman could give two fucks about. He couldn't. He couldn't care less. Because he's on top. He's in charge. He has the throne. And you don't. You're paying him. In fact, you get thrown in jail if you don't pay him. If you don't pay him 50% of your income, people with guns show up at your door and throw you in prison. Is this the equality that you're talking about? Is this the equality that you're looking for? Is this what you all dream of? So this guy can steal from steal 50% of the income of 600,000 people and give you nothing back? Be legally obligated to give you nothing back. That's the world you're all clamoring for. Think about that. I'm suggesting that maybe we should invest in ourselves and invest in each other. What a radical idea.